Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and this is my review of episode 4 of season 5 of Lower Decks. And as always, there's a lot of member berries in this show, and some people are annoyed by that, but I think for the most part they are being done well in this show, meaning they are actually fun and entertaining. Sometimes they're funny, other times they're actually being used to bridge the gap and fix all kinds of continuity issues from the previous shows. They're connecting things together, especially when it's been done with respect, meaning it's not just to poke fun and it's not just to reference for the sake of it, but it's for entertainment, and it also shows the attention to detail. It shows that someone actually took the effort to reference it in a fun way that makes sense and is also entertaining, and especially when it fixes previous continuity issues, then that's even better. So the episode begins on the Klingon homeworld, and we see the civilian life of some Klingons, which is something also very interesting that we rarely got to see in the actual Star Trek shows. We only ever saw the military of each planet, of each power in the galaxy, and yet we rarely saw their civilian life. So that's something that I always wanted to see more of, and we almost never did. And so here we see some kind of Klingon farm, and they seem to be raising Targs, and the Targ looks exactly like the one we saw in TNG, which was basically just a pig in costume. And there were many different kinds of Targs we saw in the other Star Trek shows and movies, and so I'm also enjoying how this show specifically favors the TNG style. Even the whole concept of this Klingon who used to be a captain and is now farming is kind of similar to Picard coming back to Earth where his family owns a vineyard, and so I think like it's a subtle poke at that as well. And this former Klingon captain is the one who helped Mariner out in the previous season, and so she pays him a visit to return the favor and help him become a captain again. And then they go to the city, and the funniest member berry in the whole episode was when we saw two hover bikes of Klingons almost colliding, and then one of them curses the other one by saying, "Experience Bij." And that really made me laugh because I do remember that VHS game in which the actor who played Gauron played some other random Klingon who apparently took over the bridge of the Enterprise D. And he kept saying experience Bij all the time, and that was funny. I think the meaning is punishment in Klingonese. So here it's been used as a curse, and they tell each other to experience Bij. And so to me, that's funny because I immediately got that reference, and it basically canonized that phrase which we never heard anywhere else in the Star Trek franchise except that game. And it's also funny to see Boimler being so excited about the Klingons because Boimler is kind of a representative of Trekkies like me, someone who enjoys all the little details of the Star Trek universe, so even when he's being beaten up by Klingons in the Klingon bar, he's still kind of enjoying it because it's so Klingon-like. One joke I don't seem to get is that across this whole season they've been showing Boimler growing facial hair, and each episode he has a little bit more, so that's kind of a running joke across this season, which is not so funny in my opinion. And then they go through some Klingon rituals in order to help that guy get reinstated as captain, and then they have to go through that pain ritual that we once saw Worf going through, that he has to be hit with pain sticks. One little detail that slightly annoyed me is that they specifically said here that the pain sticks basically electrify you with electricity. And yet when we watched the TNG episode, and we also saw those kinds of pain sticks in many other episodes of TNG, it seemed to not be based on electricity. It seemed to be releasing some kind of energy similar to a phaser energy, and yet here it just electrifies you, and they specifically mention that it's electricity, that it's voltage. And also they add this detail that the more you progress, the higher the voltage is, which also didn't seem to be the case in that Klingon scene in TNG. But maybe it's a different ritual, and that's why the rules are different. I guess it's possible. It doesn't have to be identical in everything. And another interesting addition to the Klingon lore is when Boimler says that this kind of ritual of going through the pain sticks symbolizes that time when Kahless made it through, and when he confronted Feklar, he took the thorns out of himself and used them to kill him, which is an interesting detail because Feklar was the kind of Klingon devil that we also once saw in TNG. Even though in TOS it was stated that Klingons do not have a devil, it was mentioned in other places that Kahless and his wife basically killed the Klingon gods, and so this might be one example of that, which I don't think was ever mentioned before. I think Feklar was only ever mentioned in that one TNG episode. So apparently he was killed by Kales after Kales made it through a field of thorns, and that's what this ritual symbolizes. So they made it through it as a group. That final stage would have been lethal, but because they all were together, that made them survive. And in the end, as always, it's all solved when that guy simply kills that main Klingon a-hole who was preventing him from getting his command back. So in the end, he just killed him. And we see some pink blood again, which is also something they always do on the show. And that's something I discussed in length in the past, that that whole issue of the pink blood that we only ever saw in Star Trek 6. And then in all the other Star Treks, they always had red blood. Until I think an episode of Discovery once showed some pink or purple blood of Klingons. And then when Lower Decks came out, they always showed the pink blood of the Klingons, just like in Star Trek 6. So I wish they would have actually explained it somehow. If they actually came up with some kind of explanation why sometimes they have that color and sometimes not, that would have been even better, in my opinion. And in the end, Mariner reveals that one of the reasons she wanted to help that guy become a captain again is because she needs his help to get somewhere in Klingon space to study some new spatial rupture. And in the previous episode, they kind of poked fun at how often they encounter all these space holes everywhere, and I thought it's just a joke. And yet here, apparently, they're setting it up as the bigger season-long arc of someone creating all these ruptures all over space, and that's why they want to study it. You know what would be interesting? If they finally bring back that species who was abducting people from the Enterprise D to study them, and they said they cannot exist inside our reality, and so that's why they had to bring people to their side, and they were trying to create a pocket of their space inside the Enterprise. They sent one of their probes through before it closed, and then it ended on a cliffhanger, and we never saw that species again. So I think it might be interesting to actually bring them back as villains. They were a little bit silly, so it would fit this show perfectly. So I wish the show would do some more epic stuff like that. Or maybe even the sphere builders from Enterprise, who are also doing something similar, trying to invade our dimension and terraforming our space to fit their needs and whatever. And so maybe it's a clue to something like that, hopefully, because they specifically mentioned they are now thinking someone is creating all these ruptures to other dimensions all over space. And there's a B-plot in this episode about that Bert guy, I forget his name, who is the ship's counselor, I think, and he's visited by members of his own species, and they're being extremely annoying. It kind of reminds me of that TNG episode when those ambassadors came over and they were behaving in strange ways. One of them just kept wanting to taste every tasty food there is, and the other one was extremely annoying to Worf, as if he's trying to piss him off, which in the end was revealed that he was deliberately doing that because he came there to study anger, and the other one came to study pleasure. And that was a pretty funny episode. So I think they're kind of trying to do something like that, but it wasn't really that funny here. And they also say that their whole culture is based on tasty food and stuff like that. And in the very end, they even show their planet. And it seems as if it's all made from very high towers and floating things, since they're birds, I guess. And so that's why they want to be closer to the sky. And yet, can they even fly? Since, their wings seem to be too small for their humanoid bodies. And so if they cannot fly, then what's the point of showing their planet as if they're all living closer to the sky to fly better? So that doesn't really make any sense. So that's my opinion. Let me know what you think, and we can discuss it in the comments below. And I will see you all next time. Bye bye.